seniors, they die by suicide more than our younger people do.
Dr. Kelly Price Noble is a powerhouse in aging care and inclusive leadership.
A former academic dean and veteran advocate, she now leads a consulting firm helping families navigate elder care with compassion and expertise.
42% of our population will end up with some form of dementia. We always care for the person who was carried off the field, but we weren't caring for the person who did the carrying. If there was an emergency, our first responders, God bless them, will go to the schools and then go to the neighborhoods and then go to our assisted living facilities. So the aging population is last on the list. Homeless and at-risk veterans, which should never be in the same sentence. And now, for whatever the reason, they're homeless. We really need to work to make space for other people, and you have to be willing to listen to other people. Get into the conversation with someone, and you have to be respectful.
What was the problems you were seeing in what you're doing and how your consulting firm is making that right for people that you serve?
Inspiring business leaders, voices that move the world forward.
Welcome to Inspiring Business Leaders, where we have real conversations with successful people that have often been through the struggle, rose out like a phoenix, and today I couldn't be more thrilled to be joined by Dr. Kelly Price Noble. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you. So we met through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You were on my radar as an inspiring business leader, so I thought I'd reach out to you and invite you on the show. Thanks for being here.
No, it's a blessing. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
So, Dr. Price Noble, you have some great acronyms after your name that mean a lot in today, right? You went to school, you paid the price to get these degrees, to get this experience. I'd love to know a little bit more about you. Why don't you tell us, first of all, who you are, where you grew up, and then we'll go into your professional career and then some of the great inspiring tactics you have for our viewers.
I was born in Ohio. My father was in the Air Force, and then we moved to Washington, D.C., and finally settled in a place called Columbia, Maryland, which is north of D.C., and grew up in a medical community. Both of my grandfathers are physicians, and my father's a physician, and you shake a tree and you find medical people, healthcare people, teachers, or business people, and I was the eldest granddaughter on both sides of the family, my mother's side and my father's side, and was trying to figure out who and what I was going to become, because there's a lot of pressure on both sides of the family. Who are you going to be when you grow up? And I thought, oh, egag. So went to college, wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I ended up with a triple major, and did that, and went to work for a television show, Wall Street Week, with Louis Rukeyser. It was fabulous, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. My goal was to be able to serve people. How was I going to be able to serve? And I ended up at Gallaudet University as a television producer and learned a whole lot about the deaf world. Was taught how to edit from a deaf individual. I learned sign language from a deaf individual, played racquetball, the whole 9 yards. And I thought, wow, this is really something I want to do. I want to work in a population with people who are not like me. And ended up at the VA in San Diego and ended up working with the spinal cord injured patients. And that really was a turning point for me. This was 2004. And I learned a lot about individuals who ambulated, if you will, in wheelchairs, kind of made their way around in wheelchairs or scooters, and came up with a kind of a mantra. We always care for the person who was carried off the field, but we weren't caring for the person who did the carrying, which really impressed me a lot. And then while caring for those individuals, I began to look at caring for an aging population, because sometimes these individuals in the wheelchairs didn't live a long life because of various things that went on with their bodies. And then in my studies, I have a doctorate in health administration. I began to look at the Tuskegee experiment. I began to look at what happened to people in Auschwitz. I looked at Henrietta Lacks, and they didn't receive appropriate health care. They didn't receive appropriate treatment. You take a look at Helen Keller. People just saw her as deaf and dumb. And she was the first person to receive a bachelor's degree who was deaf and blind in the United States. Not so bad for somebody with a disability. And I really fell in love with giving back to what we call the disabled community. And eventually in 2020, I had to put my money where my mouth was and start caring for my parents. And so I live in San Diego, California. They lived in Maryland. And every year I flew out to take care of them. And last year I moved them to San Diego. And really just started putting everything together from my work with veterans, caring for an aging population, while I was teaching, while I was going through my education. And this has been everything that I've done. And this is what I love, is caring for an aging population.
So through all that, you found your passion in the end. You did so many different things to find it. Good for you. You finally found it. So you said you put your money where your mouth is, and your parents were aging, and you decided to go that direction. Was it just your parents, or did you find that, you know, the aging population besides just your parents, was there a passion before that critical event?
My parents gave me the lived experience, which really was very, very important. And when I was studying caring for an aging population, along with my veterans, I looked into who has money to age, what are the appropriate care measures to do. And so my veterans were really the ones who led me to this. And when I was teaching, so it all kind of fell in together. But non-service connected veterans don't always have the money to take care of themselves as service connected veterans do. And then I began to look at individuals who were aging. The baby boomers were aging at 10,000 people per day. And that's a lot of people. And if you start thinking about it, who are those people who are retiring? Are they nurses? Are they doctors? Are they mechanics? Are they plumbers? Are they television producers? We're losing those people into the retirement age, but are they prepared to move on? Are they going to be living at home? Are they going to be living in assisted living? Are they going to skilled nursing facilities? Do they have dementia? 42% of our population will end up with some form of dementia. And then when I got to my parents, they were aging. My dad has a brain tumor that we discovered because of his service in the Air Force. My mom is aging and has a little bit of dementia. So it just began to really baffle me in how we care for our elderly. If there was an emergency, our first responders, God bless them, will go to the schools and then go to the neighborhoods and then go to our assisted living facilities. So the aging population is last on the list.
And they gave so much to build all the great stuff that we have now.
Yeah.
It's a little slap in the face if you ask me. But look, schools, I can see that.
Absolutely.
I don't know about the neighborhoods, but the schools, I get that.
Absolutely.
But that's shocking. Let me ask you a question in this realm, but a little bit off the path.
Yeah.
Are you hearing any regrets or triumphs? Do you talk to the aging population? I'm always curious. Like, Do they open up to you? Is this just you're helping them with their physical health, or are you talking to them about their emotional and their mental state? Do they say, are there any common things you hear from the aging population? I wish I would have done that, or anything like that?
I've heard some people say, I wish I had done. I wish I had taken that trip down the Grand Canyon. I wish I had taken more courses. I wish I became a physician. I wish I read to my children more. I wish that I knew my family more. What I have found, and it's very sad, is that when when people send our senior citizens to, let's say, an assisted living facility, a lot of them are sent and the families don't come visit because somebody else is taking care of them. We've got some widowers who go, their spouses have died. And so all the men will bunch up into a corner, they'll read the paper, they might watch, a football game or things of that nature, where all the women will gather together and do their things. And it's sad that we don't see families come visit as often. And if you are fortunate enough to get into a care community that provides you all the activities, and that's what I really try to ask people to look for. Look for something that your loved one would really relish, would grow. And it's not fair. Not everybody can afford it. There are places that have a $700,000 entrance fee. There are some places that have a $10,000 entrance fee. And those are their community fees. And then there is the monthly rent. And so not everybody can afford to leave home. But I have also found that bringing caregivers into the home can be very expensive. And then you have to watch them because sometimes things can walk. So
Wow. What if somebody can't afford this? Do they just not take care of themselves? They're just dying in their home by themselves?
some people just die at home. I've got stories of people just dying at home, and all of a sudden there's a brother who says, I haven't talked to my brother in a long time, and starts making phone calls. I remember one of my dearest friends wrote me a letter and told me she had cancer, and I hadn't heard from her in a little bit. So I called the police department in her town and I said, I am so sorry to call you. She said, no, that's why we're here. And they paid a visit and they said she had already passed. So there are teams out there who will help. I know that when I worked at the VA, we had a member who we knew, unfortunately, who was making some money because of his service-connected disability, but didn't have any guidance in life and was shooting up. And so one of my members came to me and said, we got to get this guy. So I reached out to the police department. They sent their team out and said, yep, we got to get him in. And so I sent one of my transportation people to go pick him up and got him admitted into the hospital before he left this world.
Saved him, at least from going alone, right?
Yeah.
In a desperate situation.
Yeah.
I want to back up to you have a consulting firm in this space, is that right?
I do.
What's the name of it?
Kaplan Consulting.
We kind of dived in. I want to. We should probably find out what you do. Which I love the stories, but I want to find out what your services are, and I want to keep going talking about the veterans and the aging population. But tell me a little bit more about your business.
Some people call me a private care manager. What I do is, let's say you're at the very beginning of this. Mom and dad are acting a little bit funny. You live in Connecticut, mom and dad live in Mississippi or California, or in my case, they live in Maryland. What do? You need to start having conversations. And that's the tough part, that icebreaker. Mom and dad, tell me about where you want to go. And so I have an intake form on my website that I ask you and the family to fill out because I want to know who you are and you need to know who I am. And so we chat for a little bit to make sure that we're a good fit. And once we've discovered that we're a good fit, I help to try to create a plan of care for you and your loved one. And that plan of care could be at home. That plan of care could be, do you have a will? Do you have a trust? Do you have a PULSed form, which is the physician's end of life form that helps physicians and the first responders determine in an emergency what your wishes are. And the Advanced Healthcare Directive is a legal document that where you appoint someone to take care of your final wishes. And so, do you have those documents? Do you have a notary? Many people might have a will, but don't understand that wills go to probate. And that might take 2 years, even though your loved one has said, okay, you get 50% and your sister gets 50%. It still goes to probate, and the courts still decide where that goes. Mm. Have you talked to mom and dad about where they want to go? If they're in hospice? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be interned in the ground? Do you want to be buried at sea? Where do you want to go? We talk about that. I've partnered with death doulas. And today, actually, I got to work with an individual who helps with funeral. And that's huge. These are really dark conversations for some, but they're necessary. And we need to respect where people want to go. One of the things that I found in my travels is that if you are 18 years old, you need to have an advanced healthcare directive. You need to tell people what your wishes and your desires are. You're an adult now.
Yeah, I remember you said that when we talked on the phone. You were telling me about that. You're like, well, this is one of the most important things you need is the healthcare directive, because if you get incapacitated, something happens to you, no matter what age. What are the people who are you going to point to say, whether or not you got to go in a certain situation, you're going to stay on life support, or what's going to happen to your belongings, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure that covers all that. So these are dark conversations you're having. I mean, this is talking about you're coming either you're talking to the person directly who's facing the retirement, or they're not able to take care of themselves, or their loved ones that they're somebody that they really love most of the time, I guess,
or not love.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big. So how do you hold space for them and yourself in this process from like a spiritual, emotional standpoint? Like, do you hear some hard stories that for you are like, there's some tragedy in there? Does it affect you? Like, how do you hold space when you're having the difficult conversations?
When I was at the VA, a really dear girlfriend who's a social worker, and she said, Kel, you've got people telling you some pretty deep things and some sad things, particularly Vietnam vets. And sometimes people just need someone to talk to. Can you just listen to me about my story? That's all I got. Without interruption, without fiddling with a sheet of paper, without kind of looking around the room going, yeah, okay, when is this conversation over? And you have to be able to put it someplace, and you have to be respectful. And one of the things that I am a huge proponent for is the caregiver taking care of him or herself. You absolutely must do that.
Yeah.
One of the things I did many years ago was I published a book called Blessed with Activity, a Mindfulness Journey. And at the time, it was just a place for me, who was beginning to be a caregiver. What is this journey I'm on? And I am the emotional anchor for so many people. And so I put it pen to paper. And it's not a whodunit, but it's a journey that you take. And one of the things that I wrote was about the wrinkles in people's faces. Don't look at old folks at their wrinkles and say, oh my goodness, but say, oh my goodness, those wrinkles tell stories. Just when people get tats, they tell stories. And so I've learned to put things in spaces. I, do my yoga, meditate, work out, and I talk to friends. I don't talk to friends about specific people. because I think I grew up in an old-fashioned medical community where, and this was before HIPAA came out, you don't talk about Mrs. Jones.
Mhm.
You don't talk about Mr. Jones, but you talk about the experience
Yeah.
and you allow people their space and you put it away and you respect that story.
Mm. You're speaking about the deaf person that you were working with, and sometimes silence is. Did you learn about silence in that deaf experience and working with these people? Like, is silence something that we don't practice enough in our noisy, all over the place world? Like, when you're truly listening to somebody, are you quiet in your own self, where you're holding that space and you're truly listening to what their problems are and thinking about how you're going to solve them? How does that process work with you?
That goes back to the active listener. And as a teacher, I had to hear what my students were saying to me,
Yeah,
good,
sure.
bad, or indifferent. And maybe I didn't give the correct information or I didn't explain it well enough. There's all sorts of learners. You've got the auditory learner, you've got the visual learner, you've got the kinesthetic learner. Everybody is different. And so you have to take the time and be an active listener.
Mm.
And sometimes repeat. So let me just make sure I heard your story straight. You told me, and then repeat that. And let that person know you are hearing him or her. And then a level of trust is built. Working with veterans, sometimes veterans don't want to talk to anybody else but a veteran because that veteran knows that another veteran has probably gone through something that I've gone through. I was a military spouse and I was a daughter of a vet. So I spoke the language. Even though I spoke the language, I still had to get people to understand that I'm hearing you.
Mm. Yeah.
And that I am a civilian. And thank you very much for your service.
Mm.
And one of the best things I think I ever said, and somebody said, thank you, is that please don't ever tell me that you know exactly where I've been because you don't.
Mm. Powerful. Oh, I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Whew. Wow. I mean, and the veterans, they really, like, people that go into the service, they know that they could be putting their lives at risk for their country, the people they love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a service that you're giving your life for other people. It's a beautiful thing. But then they come back and then they're not taken care of, and they might be judged by other people walking down the road. It to me, there's a bit of disrespect sometimes in that community, and respecting and taking care of those people that have protected our country and the
Yeah.
freedoms that we enjoy. It's phenomenal to me. Now, it's not necessarily, I don't want to necessarily go to the homeless population, but I would say that a lot of veterans are homeless
Yeah.
when they age,
Yeah.
and even maybe some older people. Let me ask you a question. Do people sometimes give up on themselves as they get older? Do they stop pursuing dreams? Do they stop wanting to improve themselves? Do you see people just kind of give up as they get older? Or are they striving to the end? Like, what kind of percentages are we looking at of people that just kind of give up as they reach 70 or whatever?
It's really interesting that seniors are, they die by suicide more than our younger people do
I didn't know that. Never heard that.
because they are alone.
Hmm.
And because they don't have anything else for which to live,
Yeah.
or they're on so many medications that make their bodies numb. They're on so many medications that make them stop jittering. Or if you don't take this blood thinner, or if you take a blood thinner and all of a sudden you bump into a corner, you start bleeding. So there's so much that our seniors go through. Aging, I've heard, that is one thing I've heard. They said it stinks. This hurts and that hurts and I'm bent over, and it's sometimes I have to have my food cut up, or I've aspirated, or just, and so it really is quite a bit for our aging population. I worked with a group who helped homeless and at-risk veterans, which should never be in the same sentence at all whatsoever. These individuals, whether you believe in sending people into conflict, whether you believe in joining the military, they did. And now, for whatever the reason, they're homeless. I learned a new terminology when I was working with this group that individuals, let's say they fly in from California to Hawaii, they fly in homeless. They're given a one-way ticket. They go to Hawaii and they think, hey, I can make it out on the beach, you know? And they soon learn that popping up an umbrella and grabbing that grocery cart and living on the beach isn't all what it seems to be. And so, but I've got it. I live on the island. I'm good. But they realize that temperature changes, that the weather changes, that you might need electricity, you might need a blanket. So shelters are overrun with homeless or at-risk veterans. And these people age in these shelters. And a lot of the shelters you go to, but you have to leave the following morning to make room for other people. This is not every shelter. And then you see individuals on the street. I'm a homeless veteran. You know, just give me money for a cup of coffee. I'm willing to work. And some of them say, I can make more money on the streets because I don't trust, you know, our system to take care of me. And that comes from years of just coding because somebody mistreated them along the way. So why should I believe what they're going to be doing for me now? But our VA has gotten so much better in caring for our aging population.
That's good. That's great news.
Yeah.
That's great news.
Yeah.
It's went through a lot of, I've heard the VA's went through a lot of different ups and downs over however many decades. So you're saying it's getting better.
It's getting better. And the VA is also realizing, I know that when I was working at the VA, 22 veterans a day were committing suicide because they couldn't get the help. And so finally the VA said, we need to look out into the community for more resources because we couldn't handle all of the people. So more social workers began to assist our veterans and more groups popped up to help our veterans. And it wasn't only really until our veterans in Desert Shield, Desert Storm began to really voice, hey, I got a problem. I've got this thing called PTSD.
Right.
You know, in Vietnam, the Korean War, like, hey, you know, that's just, you know, shell shock. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
And, but people are now starting to respect individuals with PTSD. And it's not just veterans who have PTSD. You can be a civilian and have PTSD. And so think about if you are a senior citizen and you've got PTSD. You know, you might end up with mild cognitive impairment. So your brain is working differently. Our brain changes as we get older. And that can be very uncomfortable because you know it's coming and you know that you might have missed an appointment. Who are you going to rely on to help you get to that next appointment? Do you know the difference between your cell phone and the television remote control?
These are real life issues that you're dealing with here with people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, it sounds sad, but you sound optimistic about the future and what you're doing. You sound like you're positive about the VA. You said they're making changes. You're being the change in the world that you want to see. You saw a problem in this space. And I want to dive into that a little bit more.
Sure.
What was the problems you were seeing in what you're doing and how your consulting firm is making that right for people that you serve?
I remember a day when one of our veterans was not doing so well. And his wife, who has a boyfriend, moved into their house. And he was at the hospital, and she kept him at the hospital. And she said, I just need him to sign over, when he dies, power of attorney to me so that I can take the house. And she came in one too many times. So I pulled in the social worker and I said, I need some assistance because I was a notary at the time. And I said, I need to speak to this patient by himself. A lot of our guys and gals didn't have a notary on the floor, so I became a notary. And it turned out that this woman just wanted her husband's goods. She knew that he couldn't come back home. She knew that when he died, that things were going to go to her because of the state of California and because they were married for a particularly long time. And I thought, there's something wrong here. So we ended up asking her to leave the room because I couldn't have somebody sign a document who wasn't competent and who was actually, excuse the expression, being jerked around. And those are some of the signals that I found when I was on the unit every day, seeing patients. How many times were there family members coming to care for them? There was a group of little old ladies who were making lap quilts for these guys to put on their legs to cover themselves. I'm thinking, they're coming in, but where's the family? So we would get them socks, we would get them blankets. We did all sorts of things. We had picnics for them. We even did car racing for them. And I thought, wow, this is living. Some people went skiing and scuba diving. And I thought, this is how you live. Mm. And it just dawned on me, where are these people going to go when they age out of the hospital? They're going to die in the hospital. They're going to go to a veterans home. And a couple of the veterans said, I don't want to go to the veterans home. They're going to give me a roommate. I don't want a roommate. I can live by myself. I'm 72 years old. And it really made me think about caring for an aging population. And this was back in 2006. And then, like I said earlier, I started caring for my folks. And some people don't have the means. So let's start creating means for people. Let's make sure they understand about Medicare and when to start applying for Medicare and understanding what Medicare will do for you and what will be paid for Medicare. Who can pay for assisted living? Do you have to go to, and I'm just going to say it, a smelling care facility where people disrespect you, where they're just getting paid by the hour and the residents are sitting in soiled garments and I didn't even realize it, but one of the individuals who I visited, I was just touring some care facilities. She said, please help me. They're mean to me. They're hurting my wrists. Wow. And I thought, this can't be. I don't understand. And the next time I came back to that facility, the care workers were standing outside trying to get their paychecks because they were shut down.
Wow.
And my mind just began to race, and I thought, goodness gracious. So how many of us have someone to care for us? How many of us have a care plan? So what my organization does is to find out who you are, create that care plan for you, and help you through the steps of understanding this labyrinth of healthcare, of care communities. Do you need an attorney? Do you need legal aid because you can't afford the $5,000 attorney fee? who can you afford? What can you afford? And what are your wishes? Where do you want to go when you leave this place?
What do you need? What do you want?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wow. That's a great service you're doing. But let me ask you something. What age? Like if you have family, but if they don't have family, what age should you start planning this sort of planning that you do for families?
I thought people were too young to start planning when they were in their 30s. They're not. Many people,
Wow.
I remember a buddy of mine long time ago said, I have long-term care insurance. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, I have diabetes. I need to have long-term care insurance because I don't know where I'm going to be. I've got type 1. And I need to know that I've got enough money for insulin. Who's going to pay for that? And where am I going to end up? What happens if I end up in a diabetic coma? I thought, okay. And so if you are, let's just say 30, what are your wishes? When you sit in front of that HR person who says, okay, you're going to go through your onboarding now, what type of insurance do you want? Are you looking at an HMO? Are you looking at a PPO? Do you want short term? Do you want long term? And a lot of younger folks are just more concerned about the 9 to 5 and getting that paycheck. But they're not planning for their demise. They're not planning on what happens to mom and dad or even grandma. I know that when my grandmother went into a care facility, she was a vegetarian. She fell and broke her hip. And breaking a hip as an older person isn't a good sign. And a lot of older people can't handle anesthesia. She went into a care facility and they fed her steak and potatoes. And I really wanted to scream and shout and say she's a vegetarian. But I knew in my heart of hearts, they just didn't want to give her the meal that she always, reared herself on. It was easier for them to give her steak and potatoes. And I thought, okay. So I kept putting this information away and realized, okay, this isn't right. And when I started caring for my folks, I hired people to come in the home. I had cameras in their condo. And my dad was funny and he would go, and I'm like, okay. But I put cameras in there because my mom had had knee surgery. And I said, if there's a day when I call you and you don't answer and you're on the ground, I need to know.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so when I started hiring caregivers, some of the caregivers would go to sleep on the job. They would get pillows. They would prop themselves up on the couch. And I thought, Jiminy Crickets. And so I would take stills of them and send them to HR. And I said, this person won't do. And we're not going to pay for that. Families need to know what their rights are. Individuals need to know what their rights are. The elderly have rights. And people need to understand that. And so what we provide is that opportunity to give you a voice and to help your loved ones have a voice.
So you have an event coming up. So you're doing events with your company.
Yeah.
Tell me more about what is this event about?
So it's a free resource fair caring for the aging population. And it's going to be on Saturday, October 25th at the Harley Davidson in San Diego on Morena Boulevard. And I got together with Harley Davidson. I was speaking at one of their leadership meetings, and they began to show me around, and they said, hey, we would love for you to do an event here. And I said, I would love to do an event. So got to thinking, my mind started moving. And so we're going to do an event caring for an aging population. There's going to be about 400 people. And I invited the American Red Cross to come. And the American Red Cross does not do locally, they don't do Saturday blood drives anymore. And I said, I need you to come and do a blood drive caring for an aging population. And they said, deal. So Harley Davidson is going to give out to individuals who give blood. They're going to give out $50 gift certificates to one. If for $100, they're going to give $1,000 towards a new bike and $500 towards a used bike. And it's going to be a dry event. I've invited Chase, the Alzheimer's Association, and a place called Monday Morning, and they're in PB, and they are a dry spirits group, and they're going to be providing the drinks. One of the things that the American Red Cross said, we don't want to join an event where there's going to be booze served, because you give blood, you've got alcohol in your system, much less if you ride and you go down, that's not a good thing. American Red Cross is doing a really big favor for me. My mother's father is Charles Drew, who discovered the way to preserve blood plasma. So if you've ever given blood, he discovered the way to preserve the plasma. And my mom's name is BB for a blood bank. And so the assisted living place where my parents live is going to come out, and they're going to show what they do and how they care for individuals. Honor Flight is coming out, who helps veterans go to Washington, D.C. We've got another group who's going to come and do care and talking about, what do caregivers do? Somebody's going to come and talk about Medicare, how to sign up for Medicare. Chase is going to be there. So it's just going to be a big party. And
really
so
cool.
Come, stick out your arm, get some coupons. There's going to be some vendors, food, just really just a beautiful day of giving back to the community. And it's a free event.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be there.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
if anybody's listening that sees this, I hope they mark their calendars and come out to support if they can. Is it an open to a public event?
It's open to the public,
Oh, great.
free, and Harley has asked, could we make this an annual event?
Wow.
Yeah.
Good. And you got these huge companies coming. That's awesome.
It's really awesome. And
People
there
are
is
chipping in.
a group, and I do need to plug them. They're called Final Option, and they are a motorcycle group, and they're going to be doing a toy drive that day.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, everybody's pitching in for the good of your cause and to help others. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for explaining your professional career. I do want to get to some of your personal development things that you do for yourself, or maybe you're recommending for your seniors. What are some things that you have done that have helped you become successful? Do you do any daily rituals or weekly rituals? Is it reading? Is it what have you done to become just the excellent person you are today?
Send checks to people.
Besides that.
It has taken me a little bit of time to figure out. I couch myself as a AAA personality. I am always spinning, and my husband laughs that I'm always going, and then when I get to bed, I plop and I'm done for the night. I love to work out. I do yoga. I like to meditate. I love to walk by the beach. I have a fish tank in my office, so I hear the water, and the fish are just very, very majestic. A couple years in a row, I've been doing the Coronado Bay ride over the Coronado Bay Bridge with my bike. I just like to breathe, and I love to garden. So my garden has to have colors in it. And if it doesn't have colors, I need to be able to eat out of it. So some things make it to the table, some things don't. But there is something about nature that really means an awful lot to me. Digging in the dirt and being quiet. And that's real, real important. You mentioned earlier just about that quiet space. And in this world full of action and noise, It's okay to find a quiet place. It's okay sometimes not to talk. It's okay to listen. I know that for this extrovert, this triple A personality, when I get on an airplane, I put my earbuds in. And it's not that I'm trying to be rude to the person who's next to me, but that flight is my peaceful journey. And I'm quiet. I read. I listen to Audible a lot because I want to go on a journey. And I used to think that Audible was cheating, but I've gotten so many things out of Audible about self-care, mystery stories, and just books that I've not read or not listened to, and I like people reading stories to me.
Yeah.
But silence is okay.
That's cool. Those are some good rituals. I love it.
Thank you.
What about books or authors or motivational people that you like? What would you recommend for our audience? 3 books they should pick up today that you love.
Oh, gracious. Blessed with Activity, A Mindfulness Journey, my book. And the reason why I say that is when I worked on the Spinal Cord Injury Center at the VA, I walked in to that center every single day, and people would say to me, "How you doing?" And I would say, "I got up." But I had to check myself because the men and the women on that unit sometimes couldn't get up by themselves. So I had to check myself. And then I started saying blessed with activity because I was so blessed with activity. I was the one who put things on my calendar. I was the one who blocked time on my calendar. And it was funny because I used that mantra for years. I still do. It's on my license plate frame. And people said, "I'm taking that." I said, "Knock yourself out." Because I was blessed with activity. I got to do the things that I wanted to do. I walked onto that unit. I could ride a bicycle. I could jog. And I needed to get really humble and fast. There's a book called Breathe. And because you've asked me now, the memory, the author leaves my mind, but it's a yellow book. And I liked it on Audible because there were exercises at the end of the book that taught me how to breathe. Breathing is tough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't realize that breathing from deep down below, and a lot of people do yoga, understand this, but breathing is really tough. And the Navy SEALs breathe, and they take in a deep breath, and they count to 4. They exhale, they count to 4. They hold for 4. They breathe in for 4, and they repeat this. And the author said, "Don't do this while you're driving a car." I said, "Okay, note to self." And then I wanted to, and I say this respectfully, pick up a book that has to do with religion. And I'm going to say, pick up the Bible, pick up the Torah, pick up. And I say that because one of my 3rd majors in college was third world relations. And I wanted to know religion because that moves so many people. I wanted to learn your religion, whoever you are, because we don't always believe the same thing, but we go to a place to pray, to lift hands, to feel the spirit, to receive energy. And I don't care if you're an atheist or not, or if you're a person who believes, but pick up a book and try to understand another person's religion. Perspective is very, very important. And I'll leave you with this. in my teachings, in my DEI teachings, I teach through the healthcare lens. I teach finance, oral care, dementia. I even brought in a DEA agent, I think I was telling you, who taught about addictions don't discriminate. But I want you, in your mind's eye, to think about two pictures. I want you to imagine an individual on a desert island, and you don't know how long he's been there. But you know that he's been there for so long that when he sees out in the distance someone in a rowboat, and that rowboat is heading toward the island, that's frame one. Frame two is that there's an individual who's in a rowboat who sees an individual on a desert island, and he is so elated. You know that when he gets off that boat, he is just going to be so excited to see a deserted island or with somebody on it. But there's a conundrum. You know that the person on the desert island is going to jump in that rowboat and leave. And you know that the person who's been in that rowboat is going to jump out onto that island. And they're going to have to figure out from where each other came. And they're going to have a conversation. Do we stay on this deserted island, or do we get in this rowboat and go away?
Yeah.
It's about perspective. So when you're working with an aging population, understand perspective. Our aging population has been someplace, and now they're in a new place, maybe. Respect that person. Because you have no idea from where he or she came.
Yeah. Speaking of DEI, I mean, age and suffering doesn't discriminate, does it? Society may in some ways, but age and death, they don't care what gender you are, what race you are, how much money you have.
No.
But if you have the money, if you have the resources, or if you don't, to know what your options are, because some people might not know they have options. That's what the beauty of what you do is you're uncovering this for them. That's what I was hearing through what you do is you might not know what you have available to you. That's why you reach out to somebody like you. It's a wonderful thing that you're doing.
Thank you,
Dr. Kelly Price Noble.
Thank you.
You've worked hard to get where you're at. Let me ask you something. Running your own business, what is a few of the pros and few of the cons of it?
I don't have enough hands. I love what I do. From the beginning of the morning to the end of the day, and my mind is always going. I have a great supportive community. And one of the things that I like with my company is that I want to make sure that I can expand and help employ other people, because there's people out there. But I want people to understand that when you call my company, you're going to get me. You're not going to get just a number, press 1, press 2. I want you to hear me, and I want to meet with you. I want you to see me, whether we meet over coffee, whether we meet on Zoom, whether we talk on the telephone. I think the toughest thing is you want to make sure that you have enough resources to help the people who you care for. And I love networking. So if you've got somebody who you think I need to know, let me know. Today I met somebody who deals with funerals. And I'm like, I need you.
Yeah.
I don't want you today, for me personally. But I know people who don't know what to do. Okay, so someone now has passed away and you're waiting for decedent affairs, or you're waiting for the coroner. Okay, now what do I do? And I want to help you with that. I've partnered with a death doula who is such a great spirit, and she'll help you leave this world how you want to leave it. And the interesting thing about a death doula is you don't know how long that person's going to be with you. It's not like coming into this world, but going out of this world sometimes can be beautiful and sometimes it can be tragic.
What's your favorite part about life?
Oh, meeting people, connecting with people. I am so much of an extrovert that I have to be careful when I enter a room, for fear that I might scare off those introverts. I love meeting new people. I love shaking hands and getting to know people. And I want to know about you. Tell me what you do. Do you garden? Are you in races? Do you um, make carpentry? Do you do curtains? I want to know about you. And do you do something that I don't do? That's really cool.
You like, it sounds like connection with others, right?
Yeah,
Hearing their
yeah,
stories, connections.
yeah.
Okay, what is something that you feel would make the world a better place? It could either be individually or collectively.
We need to work on understanding people's perspectives. We have so much division in our world. I don't care what side of the party you vote. I really could
That's
give.
that's a big topic. We don't have time, but I agree with you.
Yeah,
It's crazy right now.
I don't give two hoots.
Yeah, neither do I.
But
I'm with you.
we're all humans, and we breathe the air. We might breathe air differently. You and I might walk differently. We might speak differently. But I would love it if you would learn from where I came so that you understood my perspective. And by golly, I need to learn how to understand you. Just because someone is from a different ethnic background doesn't mean you get to point fingers and say, oh my God, that individual. Well, you know what?
Great.
Learn about that individual before you begin to put that person in a box. And there are so many programs that people do to understand that word privilege. So you think you might be privileged. Okay. How many people have had cancer and survived? How many people went to boarding schools? How many people graduated from high school? How many people have siblings? How many people have parents? How many people are orphans? We've got perspective, and we need to learn people's perspective to start learning how to understand one another. Now, maybe this is a Pollyanna attitude, but if we don't stop shouting at one another and make room for space to hear one another, I think that is our greatest mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of chatter out there, and a lot of the chatter is nonsense. I'm not trying to be negative, but I for myself, I stopped recently, the last 18 days, watching the news and scrolling social media. And what a difference it makes when you don't let all the bad, unimportant news, unimportant events shape who you are, and go back to the interpersonal understanding of perspective. You can understand perspectives of religion, you can understand perspectives of politics, of countries, but the perspective of an individual and the interpersonal play of connection and relationships, do you think there's something to that versus, because if you give a broad stroke, like you said, you could say, oh, well, you're this skin tone, or you're this gender, or you're this financial, you're in this financial bracket. Even within those, like you said, if you're a rich white person and you have cancer and you're about to die, how privileged are you? Or really, I mean, I'm not saying that to be rude. I'm just saying that person, you might say, oh, well, they're rich and they're this and they're that, but that they're about to go. I mean, that adds perspective to it, right? Perspective is multifaceted, is what I guess I'm getting at here.
Yeah. Perspective is real important when it comes to understanding. And one of the things that I loved to teach when I was teaching DEI, and again through the healthcare, when I brought people on to be in my panel, I asked individuals about oral care. Do you know how to brush your teeth? Do you know how to floss? What's the difference between using toothpaste and baking soda? Many people didn't grow up learning how important it was to brush your teeth or to floss. And if you don't take care of your oral care, you end up with disease. You could end up with certain types of dementia. You could end up with heart disease. You could end up toothless, bad breath, things of that nature. And think about what Alzheimer's. Well, Alzheimer's is for old people. Well, no, it's not. I interviewed a woman who was 45 and then in the Navy, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Wow.
So what about finance? What about people who leave high school, graduated, GED, what have you, and they don't know how to write a check or balance the checkbook or put money under the mattress like grandma did? There's an education in trusting people. And so I felt that it was my duty to really get away from the male-female, black-white issue and really teach people about perspective. When you see those pictures of illusions, the old woman and the young woman, it's perspective. What do you see first? And it's not so much that you can't see. My job is to help you see. And by the time I was done with that course, people said, okay, we need to take a breath because this was really deep. They felt like they went through a college course. And it's only about an hour, hour and a half, depending how many people I teach it to. But they began to really understand that there are people out there who have different opinions. And if you are that rich white guy who is 70, who takes up the majority of the health care, by the way, sometimes you don't really care. But I think our younger generation really cares more about the individual. There's so many, they don't care if you're green, blue, black, purple, and you've got a feather on your head. They want to be your friend. You know, whether you're cool, whether you're not cool. So we really need to work to make space for other people. And you have to be willing to listen to other people and don't just go, Get into the conversation with someone.
And that's what we're talking about, listening. I think I think a lot of people like to talk, and when you're talking, you're not listening, you're not learning. You're only regurgitating the stuff that you've learned, and that's the beautiful thing about meditation and silence. Listening to your own chatter, which is a whole nother level, right?
That's hard.
Even other people's.
Yeah.
It's even harder to listen to our own chatter. We do anything to not listen to our own chatter. We fill our days with all kinds of, this is what meditation, I mean, I meditate daily and I absolutely love it. And I even meditating daily, it's a practice, because when you first start, the noise, it's loud, loud, loud. And you start seeing the patterns of how our self-talk, it's really been an incredible journey to understand my own self-talk along that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to wrap up. So this, in what, to our audience right here in this camera, why don't you give us a sign-off message from you? What you think is the most important message to leave people with from our conversation today, what you're doing for your mission or vision, whatever you think that is, go ahead and you can go right into that camera and share it with our audience here today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Richard, thank you very, very much. Kaplan Consulting is here to assist you, to assist caregivers, to assist families who really don't know where to begin. And I want to help you. Please visit Kaplan Consulting, that's KAPN consulting.com, and take a look and see what we do. I really try to have holistic measures and try to assist people with supportive care solutions. And I'm here to assist, answer questions. Maybe I'm right for you, maybe I'm not, but at least give us a chance, start out with us, and I would be glad to share you with some of my other colleagues and some other people who are definitely interested in working with you and helping the elderly population.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us for this inspiring episode of Inspiring Business Leaders with Dr. Kelly Price Noble. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Sharing your wisdom with us, sharing your perspective, and how we can have a better perspective on life through your awesome tips and suggestions. So thank you.
Thank you.
God bless.